and welcome into another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, maybe you're mowing the lawn, or maybe you're changing diapers, or maybe you're just finally getting a moment to yourself, to sit back, relax, and listen to your favorite podcast. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're listening from, thanks for doing so. I'm your host, Jay, and I'm super excited to be with you. I'm joined by the real Liz, Slim Shady out there, by my friend Selena here. Super excited to have you, Selena. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to work with you on this show.
Yeah, I'm excited to chop it up. I'm excited to have a great conversation today. But before we get too far into it, before I introduce you even further, introduce your podcast a little bit more, I do want to shout out where our beats come from. Our opening and our closing beats come from the Podbeat app. So the Podbeat app takes your podcast listening experience. You can do it for this podcast. You can do it for your podcast. You can do it for any podcast or audiobook. And what it does is it overlays your podcast with a beat that you can set to your cadence. So if you want it a little bit slower or you want a little bit higher, you can do that. If you need it louder or if you need a little bit more quiet, you can do that. Whatever you're trying to accomplish with a beat, whether it's working out, running, or just adding a beat to get your podcast a little bit more of that oomph, you can do so with the Podbeat app. It's free to download from the Google Play Store, Apple App Store, or wherever you get your apps from. It's available. It's fantastic. There is a great little subscription that you can buy as well for $2.99, maybe $3.99. That gives you unlimited access to their entire catalog of beats, their entire variety, and there's so much more coming with them. They're fantastic. Big shout out to the Podbeat app, as well as to our other sponsors and our other partners of the podcast, For Fathers Clothing, Dad Bod Apparel, the June app, and all the other ones. So thank you guys for supporting them, for supporting us. And yeah, that's enough of the business, as they say in the industry here. So a little bit about Selena. Where does she come from? Who is she? Well, Selena's great. She's funny. She's great on her Threads account is top tier, chef's kiss gold. Her accounts on social media, again, top tier gold. But she's the co-host of the Trigger Warning podcast. Trigger Warning podcast production or just Trigger Warning podcast?
It's the Trigger Warning podcast, and I just use production as just like we're going to build off of that being a production.
Got it. And so what you guys do with the Trigger Warning podcast is you guys blend dark comedy with mental health topics, providing a very unique platform along with, of course, frequently asked questions, articles, and crisis support resources. So how did this come to life? How did it start? Where does it come from? And just kind of like the origin story of the Trigger Warning podcast. And of course, then just more about yourself as well.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for my podcast introduction. So how the podcast got started initially is I hit a really bad breaking point in my life. It was so bad that I had to leave my job after 7 years of being at my job. And while I was on break from, I was on FMLA leave, and then I left, and when I was trying to figure out my healing journey, how I was going to get through all of this, I started a blog website, and I started talking about my entire journey, and I was not honest with the way that I was feeling. I would do these coping mechanisms and then go on my blog and act like it worked. And I had a lot of people actually following my blog, but I was never following through with any of the things that I was doing on this blog. And when I took a step back and realized that I wasn't doing any of those things, I felt like a liar, like an extreme liar, because I'm not a routine person and I never will be a routine person. So that just wasn't my journey. It just was never meant to happen that way. But I always felt like I wanted to have this platform that actually is real, raw, and honest. And I was just thinking one day, I could do a podcast, but could I really do a podcast? Could I figure this out and do this? And I laid out the foundation for what I wanted this podcast to be about, and just sent my co-host this long text message about, hey, I want you to be my co-host on this because I think you and I have different perspectives on when it comes to this, but we also have we also agree on so many different things. And it was more about spreading awareness to the difficult topics that no other podcast, no other self-help book or healing book or whatever, none of those speak on the topics that we speak about. They kind of steer away from that because, it's triggering, very triggering. But at the same time, people need to understand and be validated, seen, and heard when it comes to all the different things that we discuss and the resources that my co-host and I provide. Like, we get down to the direct links, like handpick the direct links to things that we talk about in our show. And there's no we have the resources tab on our website. There's no clicking to find what we're talking about. We're taking those direct links and putting them right in the spot that they go in, and whatever episode we talked about. So that people don't have to go and find those links, and then we're being real, raw, and honest about what we've been through, what we are going through. And she's a parent, and I'm not a parent, so it's a different thing between her and I. She sees things from a different aspect because of her profession as well, but I can't get into what her profession actually is. But she sees it from every aspect, where I just don't see it from as much as she does. But I see it because I've lived through it for over 10 years, and my last ditch effort saved my life completely. And the hardest pill to swallow is the fact that my brain is trying to kill me almost every day of my life, but at the same time, that's the same brain that has saved my life. So when we share those things, our audience feels better. And I have had so many people that I don't know reach out to me, but so many people that I do know reaching out to me and telling me how our platform has made them feel, and that they are going to do the things that they need to do in their journey for healing. And that if we can touch at least one person and help save their lives, that's enough for us.
100%. And that's an important work to do, when it comes to getting down to the raw, the real, the stuff that people are living in their day to day, because it's so easy for really anybody with a couple muscles, maybe a female with a nice figure or whatnot, to jump on and start talking rah-rah, self-help, all this stuff. It's so easy. It's so generic. It's played out at this point. It's anyone can do it, and everyone decides to do it because that's an easy path into, content creation, into getting views, into getting likes, because everybody for some reason resonates with it. And people resonate with it, especially if they like what they see on the screen and whatnot. But people don't, but those people can't when it needs to go deeper. They can't go deeper because they never lived anything deeper. Or when they're trying to really promote a hard-hitting quote or something really deep, is that, yeah, they can play some music, they can change the tone of their voice or whatnot, but they don't really get it. They don't really understand it. They don't understand the pain that it's going through. Like, someone can listen to, and this is one artist I bring up all the time on the podcast because I love his work, I love who he is, I love what he does, but Jelly Roll's music, you can listen to Jelly Roll's music and be like, oh yeah, that's great. Or you can listen to Jelly Roll's music and you can listen to the struggles of addiction. You can listen to him growing up in an addicted household. You can listen to his struggles of trying to raise a daughter post addiction and post being in prison and post doing all these things. Or you can really listen to what's going on. And I think that's a huge difference that sets Jelly Roll apart from the common, country artists. Because yes, all these country artists they're fantastic. They have great stories. Country music is great for storytelling. It's probably the best genre out there for storytelling. Outside of that, but then you also listen to Eminem, and you really listen. And I know you're a big fan. I know you've been listening to the Death of Slim Shady Part 2. I've had that thing on repeat. I've listened to it several times a day at least. But there's even things in there.
That's really exciting for me.
Yeah. like the song for Haley that's on there. Is it with Skylar Grey, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like that one just hits. Like for me as a follower, like that one just hits. Like you can listen to that song and be like, oh yeah, he has a song for his daughter, but like me listening to that, it's like this is like if these were his last words. Like these are the last words like he really wants to like get out and to say. Like something's gonna happen to him tomorrow kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So it's really cuts really deep. And so that's what sets your podcast apart is that it gets into that nitty gritty, gets into that deep aspect of life,
Mm-hmm.
into being a human being. Because yes, like you said, it was easy to put up on a blog to say, "Oh, I'm doing this. This is how it works," because we know how it's supposed to look, right? We know what we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to say. We know what we should be saying, and it's people are easy to relate with that. It's like, oh yeah, you're doing that. I can do that. Same thing here. Easy peasy kind of thing. But I guarantee those people that were saying it was great and they're relating with it also aren't doing it too. They're just like in their head saying, "Oh yeah, well that sounds great." So on your guys' platform, what is it? What are some of those things that you guys really have gotten into that you're going like really deep into the trenches on?
So there have been I have my resources tab pulled up because there are
Hmm.
so many things that we've taken this deep dive into,
Oh, okay.
and I feel like it's incredibly important. Well, I guess for some reason it's not going to show up. So we've kind of spoken about both of our mental illnesses and took a deep dive into what we've experienced and that I have been on and off medication my entire life. And so, there are people who are against taking medications, and I completely understand that. And I will never tell somebody that one way is going to work over the other way. That's just not what I do. And so I explained that I have been on my journey for 10 years. And then there are certain things that I've done that would.
Are you okay if I pull this up and share it?
Sure.
Anyways, go ahead, continue.
Okay, so we have covered so much about my life and how I've taken a deep dive into like where I've done the medication thing and then gotten off the medication thing, feeling like it's not working, and then feeling like I have whatever I'm doing as far as healing isn't working either. So, this on and off thing with my medication is something that I really want to drive home with people because medication is there for a reason. It's not there because they just want to throw it out there. And there are many people that abuse the medications, and unfortunately, that is, then put on the shoulders of somebody who really needs that kind of medication. And I'm a prime example of somebody who has tried to do it the natural way. I changed my eating to all organic. I was exercising every day, but I'm obsessive, completely obsessive when I get to things like that. And those two things led me into an eating disorder. So it's really easy for somebody to say, eat healthy, go for runs, exercise, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but if you are somebody who cannot cope with those things and you don't go way too far with those things, like that's just not going to happen for me. So I speak about my last ditch effort to save my life and try to tell people that it's okay to take medications.
Mhm.
It's okay to, but it's okay to do how your journey, however you want to do your journey, but as long as you're doing something about it. And we talk a lot about the stigma and how that's never going to change unless people speak up and be advocates for themselves, and then people stop blaming their mental health issues on themselves. You have to be accountable for your own actions, and you literally can't say, oh, this is because I'm bipolar, I'm doing this because I'm bipolar, I'm so sorry, I'm doing this because of my anxiety. And people are labeling themselves based on their mental illness, and that's just, we're never going to break the stigma for as long as it's been, and it's still a very touchy subject.
Mhm.
But we're never going to break that stigma unless people stop doing things like that, because the apple doesn't the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and we've figured out that this is a genetic thing, and those studies are just, coming to light that women were treated differently than men when it comes to ADHD, because they put a couple little 5-year-olds in a room together. That's how they base their ADHD on, like, diagnosis, and women were slipped under the cracks because we didn't present things the same way. And then we've also taken a deep dive on workplace, like mental health. We've also taken a deep dive on how bills can affect people with their mental health. We've provided direct links for people who need the help. And we really, in one of our episodes, took a major deep dive into the lack of support that there is for new mothers. And so because mothers can develop postpartum depression, of course, and that stuff is not taken as seriously, because, like, oh, they're going to get over it, it's postpartum depression. But if you don't treat that, that can cause a woman to go into psychosis. And you hear about women that have actually murdered themselves and their kids, and so the non-treatment of that has led to psychosis. And Jewel, I was watching one of your podcasts, and you shared how there are more resources for women, and is anybody asking if the man is okay? And I think that's important as well. But if the woman aspect of it didn't go great, they didn't have somebody to coach them and go, like, assist them with what parenthood is going to be like nurses should be doing in the hospital, and nurses should be asking men how they're doing as well. But if the woman isn't getting treated properly and given the resources, the man is not going to be either. And I do
Yeah,
have
100%.
resources on my... Sorry?
No, I agree. I agree with that. 100%.
I do have resources that say maternal, but it's actually for both parents to look at and help each other and aid each other into parenthood. And that is something that's really important to me too. And sometimes when you're not asked by friends or relatives directly how you're doing, most of the time the woman is going to get the text message like, how are you guys adjusting to parenthood? And it may not even be relayed to you, because the woman can say, oh, doing really good, but never have asked the father if they're doing well, because the message was just relayed to them, and, like, oh, just saying, oh, we're doing really well, where they never asked you how they're doing. So you may not even know that people are asking how you're doing as a father.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with all that. And so I want to break that down, because you hit on like 3 different topics I think are really important to break down in there. So the first one I want to break down in there is the whole medication thing. And I work with a lot of youth and families. I work directly with our med provider at my agency. And so the best way that she has helped me be able to explain medications to families and to youth and to families possibly taking that med management journey, medications they're not here to fix you, right? They're not here to do everything that you aren't doing right now. They're not to be everything you aren't doing right now. Medications are chemicals. They're to give your body and your brain a chemical that you don't have right now. Or to speed up a chemical like an antibiotic will speed up the healing, so it'll speed up your production of white blood cells and it'll tear up your gut at the same time. But everyone loves a good antibiotic. Just kidding, everyone. I don't know anyone that likes antibiotics at all, but they are what they are. But when it comes to psychiatric medication and things like that, they're all to give your body the chemicals that you're missing right now. So instead of you being able to, or let's look at a child with like profound ADHD symptoms. Let's say they're 8, 9 years old, and let's say they're a little girl, but they have just a really hard time staying focused for long periods of time, or they're obsessive, or as things change, they outburst, or things like that, right? And so you're looking at them, and you provide this medication to this little girl, and she can breathe, right? She's not as when she focuses on something, she can lessen that focus enough to still be focused, but then when it's time to transition, she can transition a little bit smoother without issue, right? She can handle those like times where she needs to regulate a little bit better because now her brain is producing those chemicals to give her that buffer to be able to use those coping skills that she's learning in therapy, to be able to use those coping skills that are coming day to day that she knows to take deep breaths. Maybe it's to walk away. Maybe it's to put it down. Maybe it's to ask for help. Maybe it's to ask for more time, right? So that medication is allowing that where before it's just big meltdown, upset, pushback, where it looks more like ODD versus actual true ADHD kind of thing. And then same for a little boy. Maybe for this little boy, instead of him going straight to anger or getting mad, upset, wanting to lash out, now he's able to also regulate. So it gives these kids and it gives you as a person that time to regulate because your brain has enough chemicals to be able to do that. To where if you don't have those chemicals, you just go straight off I don't want to say the deep end, but you go you go a little bit 0 to 10 a little bit quicker in that aspect. So that's, the way to think about medication. And it's not for everybody, right? Like I've been on enough
Exactly.
medication for the last like 5 years for myself. Like I have
Mhm.
a mood disorder. I fall on the bipolar spectrum, which a lot of people don't know. Bipolar is a spectrum. There's many aspects of bipolar, to where there's very low to mild bipolar disorders, and there's very high to severe bipolar disorders as well, and everything in between. It just depends on where you fall, but it's completely different for everybody. But medication may not be for you, but it could be for me and vice versa. So it's really up to everyone's decision to be able to take that and to be able to understand what the medication does, which is important to then ask your med provider, whether it's a ARMP provider, maybe it's a doctor, maybe it's a psychiatrist, whoever it is, ask them the details. And a good med provider should be checking in every 2 weeks to a month, right when that prescription's getting close to be needing refill. Okay, how are things going? What are we seeing? What's different at home? What's different at school? Asking those questions and those follow-ups to make sure, like, okay, well, maybe the dosage isn't right. Because most times med providers will start with a low dosage, right? A 2.5 milligram versus where they know it probably needs to be at a 5, but they really just want to see how the 2.5 works to get in the habit of taking it to see if that's even doing anything kind of thing. So they do it on purpose. So if it feels like it's not working at first, that's probably on purpose to where it's not supposed to work at first. That's what happened to me. I was prescribed something and then I'm like, what? This doesn't help. This isn't doing anything. And then my psychiatrist just straight up told me, oh, because it's a lower dose. I started you lower on purpose to see how it would work. If I would need to adjust, okay, so I'm going to adjust it up to this dosage kind of thing. And I'm like, why didn't you just start there? And then he explained to me, I was older. I was in my 20s at the time. And he's already saying, well, I do that on purpose to see how it's going to work, to make sure that you're going to take it first off, and to see maybe I was wrong, maybe I was right, but I don't want to overwhelm your system. I don't want to overwhelm your body with this so that you feel like a zombie or you feel zombied out. So it's really about working together with your provider.
And I feel that way, and that's like 100% the way that I feel. And it's defeating when you're working with a primary care practitioner because they're not skilled enough to know. Like there are some primaries that ask you to take a genetic test to figure out what medications do and don't work for you. And I've learned now that I'm with a psychiatrist, I'm learning that those tests never mattered. And
Mm-mm.
I was misdiagnosed for so many years, which is why I was on and off medication, because I gave them I gave them a month to work. And when they didn't work, I was just over it. I'm like throwing them out the window. But I needed something to stabilize me because I always felt like I didn't belong in my skin and I just wanted to rip my skin open. I was so frustrated, so irritated. And then I learned that I was bipolar. I have bipolar disorder as well, but the crazy thing is that it used to be named manic bipolar depressive disorder. Now we have like 3 or 4 bipolar diagnoses, diagnoses, then it's like difficult to figure out which one you're on. But it's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever.
Yeah, there's multiple even within those too. So
yeah, and it's very hard to figure out. Like even my psychiatrist is like, "This is so new. Like studies are so new about this, so it's kind of hard to say, which one you're on right now. But you definitely have it, and then." It's really hard to figure out whether you're bipolar or you have borderline personality disorder, because those two, if you look up the symptoms of those two, you're going to see that they are exactly alike. And I'm a member of the National Alliance of Mental Illness. Now, I get those resources and updates and everything sent to me directly, and then I go on their website and read more. And when you look at bipolar disorder, there is barely any resources or anything to go off of when it comes to bipolar disorder. And that's so frustrating, because once you get diagnosed with that, and like you said, you should be asking the person who is prescribing you the medication, you should be asking how you should be taking it. Like, how has it affected other people? What do you think is going to improve for me? And like you said, these medications are not there to fix you, and people should be asking their
well, we shouldn't even have to. One of the big problems that I have is like we shouldn't really have to ask, right? It should just be told to us. Everything should be up front. Like when we're given our options, we should be given the option, because it's not a one size fits all, right? Like a typical primary care, like your normal doctor you see once a year, or your kids see once a year, right? They don't have the qualifications to be able to say, okay, you need this very specific medication, this specific dose, where a psychiatrist is able to do that. A primary care doctor will say, diagnosis, the one medication I know treats this. Diagnosis, the one medication I know treats this. Diagnosis, maybe I know 2 medications that treat this, so if this one doesn't work, here's the second one, kind of thing. And so that's the problem that part of the problem that we have, is that these doctors have the ability to diagnose and to quote unquote treat, but they don't have the experience. Some do. There are some ones that are out there that maybe have a background, or maybe have done their own personal research so that they understand a little bit deeper, but generically speaking, that's not common. And so that's part of the issue here.
Primary care practitioners are actually given like a list when it comes to mental health like illnesses. They're actually given a list that they need to follow. Like, this could work for anxiety, depression. This could work for anxiety, depression. And they start you at the lowest dose, not working. Start you at the next dose, not working. So they're in no way, shape, or form actually diagnosing exactly what you have, and they're not capable of doing that. And so when you are constantly misdiagnosed and mistreated for these disorders, especially something as serious as bipolar or borderline personality disorder, those SSRIs that they keep putting you through are actually doing more harm to your body than good, more harm to your mental health than good. And it's so sad that that's kind of the route you have to follow, and then you have to ask to go to, hey, I need a therapist, hey, I need a psychologist, and then it is kind of hard for people to ask, or like think that there's more wrong with you. But like you said, medications aren't meant to fix you, but they are meant to give you more peaceful days than they are. And that's the whole point, is you want to feel better more often than you do feel better. Like, that's just point blank. Obviously, that's why anybody goes that far.
Yeah, because a part of it is treating. The primary care physician will treat the diagnosis, but they're not treating the symptoms. Where a psychiatrist or someone with a higher level of experience, higher level of care, when it comes to psychiatric med management, will be able to treat the symptoms versus treating the diagnosis itself. So, but let's move on from this one. The next thing you mentioned there after the med management was, this is one thing that drives me absolutely crazy when I'm working with youth and with families, is the trends on social media for self-diagnosis. And then that self-diagnosis leads to justification of behaviors. It leads to justification of actions, behaviors, thoughts. It's kind of in line with the jokes that you see on like TV and whatnot. I see it on Bob's Burgers often, to where there was an episode I watched recently to where Bob and Teddy, they were looking for the comment for 30 years, and then Teddy was blaming his last 30 years of bad luck on a comment kind of thing. And so it goes back to the same way people use their horoscopes to justify their reason for living and for existence and whatnot, right? Which, cool, it can help you understand, it can give you hope and whatnot. Like, I'm not trying to take away that part of it. But when it comes to mental health and mental illness, you saying like, oh, well, I'm just doing that because I'm anxious, or because I'm bipolar, or because I'm depressed. Like, your mental illness is not an excuse for your shitty behavior. Like, I'm sorry. It can be a reason why you're having shitty behavior, but now you know the reason why. What are you doing to actively change that and to get better? Because you can't just live in this space to where, oh, well, I'm shitty at my job because I'm always depressed. Okay, what are you doing to work on that? Or, I'm highly productive at my job because of, my ADHD, or because of this, or because of that, or vice versa, wherever you kind of fall on that, right? Whatever it is. If you're an asshole to people because you have bipolar disorder, okay, well, buddy, you got some problems, because you can be a fun asshole or you can be just a mean asshole, and it really just depends on where you're going to be at. Like, but you can't justify your behavior with your diagnosis. That's not fair to all the other millions of people who have the same diagnosis as you, who aren't using that to justify their behavior, who know, like, okay, that's a part of me. I need to fix this part of me. I need to actively work on this part of me to get better, whether that's through therapy or counseling or, seeing a psychiatrist, whatever that looks like, to be able to get through it. That's what it's going to look like. But there's no excuse. The only excuse for your shitty behavior is yourself. And because you're making shitty choices, but some of that could be related to your mental illness because you're not actively working on getting it treated. But in no way should it be to justify it. Because when you justify it, like you said, it continues to add to the stigma. It continues to create this negative stigma to where people who do have that, they're not going to talk about it. People who are feeling like, okay, yeah, something's really off, but I can't go and talk about that because I saw that one guy at that one place that one time who was an asshole, and I don't want to be perceived as an asshole, all these things. So it's this never-ending circle. So something that has to stop, and we have to be accountable. We have to take responsibility for ourselves and for who we are, so that we can essentially get better, but also help show, like, okay, yes, you may have this, but I also have this. Let's get through this kind of thing. Here's some ways that work for me. Here's my blueprint. Maybe my blueprint will match a blueprint for you, or maybe you take parts of my blueprint and add them into your blueprint. But this is kind of what this looks like here. So yeah, we definitely got to stop doing that because it drives me crazy. But again, it goes back to our last point, to where anyone on TikTok can grab their phone, grab a video, and look up, okay, WebMD, symptoms of ADHD. Hey guys, I was looking up and I found these symptoms of ADHD, blah, 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 blah. I have it. You've never been diagnosed with ADHD. I can tell by looking right at you from the
they
screen.
self-diagnose.
Yeah.
And then they never even see. I'm sure that more than half of those individuals never bring it up to a primary care practitioner, never go to therapy, don't end up going to a psychologist who is going to properly diagnose you. If you really are having symptoms, you need that proper diagnosis, because how are you going to work on it? How are you going to take accountability? Like, I cannot stand that somebody says they're doing this because I have this, and then I don't, and then I know that they're not doing anything, whether it's a natural method or it's just like manifestation, these kind of things, like healing journey. I don't care what it is, as long as you're working on it and not doing things that are actively going to make it worse, especially drinking and doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And it's really disappointing to me, because there are it sucks to know that people are self-diagnosing when it took me years to get a diagnosis, and I beat the crap. I used to act like a terrible person, but I didn't know that had I didn't know I had bipolar disorder. I didn't know what it was, so I had to beat the crap out of myself to say, I need to start taking accountability. I need to stop doing this to my loved ones. And then I got the proper diagnosis and I realized, okay, well, this is why I acted the way that I did. But I cannot do that just because of this diagnosis, because it's never going to take that stigma. It's just never going to take that away if we keep doing that as a society.
Yeah, no, 100%, because it doesn't help you at all to just live in this space to where, and that's something we share here, right? The bipolar diagnosis, even though it sounds like we may be on different ends of that spectrum here, which is totally okay. There's still probably common symptoms that you and I both have. We don't have to symptom share right now. We can do that on our personal time and whatnot. But it doesn't help me to say like, okay, well, I'm lashing out at you because I have bipolar disorder, or I have, I have this, these are my symptoms kind of thing. So that justifies my behavior. You have to deal with that now. No, 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 no. That's not on you. That's on me to understand, okay, this is an area that I'm affected with. This isn't just my natural behavior. This is a behavior that, I have this because of this, which is out of my control. But I'm given this, so now I have to deal with it. I have to have this accountability for myself to take responsibility to say, okay, this is something very common of me. This is something that I'm going to struggle with more than the average person. How can I get better at this? What are the things that I need to do? Do I need to change my diet? So am I more affected, and really trying to understand, working with a provider, the right provider, to say, okay, when are you affected by this? Okay, these are my, I guess, very fitting triggers for this. This is when I feel triggered the most, is when after I eat a bunch of pasta or something, because my body's trying to process all these carbs, so I have a lot more energy and I haven't gone and burned off my energy today, kind of thing. And so, okay, well, now I need to know, if I eat a bunch of carbs, I need to burn off that energy, or I need to take for walks. If I don't do that, then I'm going to be more reactive. If I'm more reactive, then this is going to happen. It takes that time of that self-reflection. It's not going to happen overnight. And that's okay. It's a journey. It's an experience, whether it's a healing journey, whether it's working with a provider, whatever your preference is. But you need to be doing something. You need to be doing something. You can't just live in this diagnosis. You can't just live in the anxiety. You can't just live in the depression. And I know that's easier said than done. And some people are probably like, well, why can't I? Sounds great. You two, you guys know what you're talking about because you guys have done it. But it's like we've gone through our own journeys separately. Like, we've gone through our own journeys. I've gone through my journey. You've gone through your journey. And we're still going through our journeys, right? It's a continuous kind of thing, to where I have days where I can't even get up and like record a podcast because I'm feeling it. I'm just like down, I'm low, I'm feeling it. I'm just like, man, I can't do it today. Or days where I'm at work where I'm just like shut off in my office, and the only people I talk to are the clients I absolutely have to see that day. And then other than that, I'm like, don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't ask me how I'm doing, because I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk to you. You don't want to talk to me today, because I know that about myself. I know if I'm not shut off in my office today, I'm going to say some stuff and I'm probably going to regret, and I'm probably going to hurt your feelings more so than I do on a normal day. At least I'm joking about it when I'm hurting your feelings the other days. So, yeah. So it's important. You have to get help for these diagnoses. You have to be on some kind of journey. You have to be working actively towards your healing. You have to be doing something to make yourself better. You can't just live in it and stay in that space forever, because that's unhealthy in itself. That's the most unhealthy thing you can do.
Excuse me. You have to find your boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, you have to figure out what triggers you. I'm sorry,
You're fine. You have to find the why, right? You have to find
exactly
why these things are bothering you, why your triggers are. Something that I've talked about since the beginning of the podcast. Literally the very beginning. I think one of the very first episodes is, what's your why? Why? Like, you have to be able to why down your what's going on. Okay, why am I feeling like this? Why do I feel like that? Why is that a trigger? Why does that make me react? Why is this? Why is that? Why is this? Get it all down. You have to follow that thread, that staircase, all the way down until you get to the very bottom of that staircase, and then you're at the very bottom of that staircase, and lo and behold, it's probably something from your childhood. Lo and behold, it's also generational trauma. Myself personally, like, I feel that in a lot of different ways. I'm biracial. I have family that this is one thing that was in high school. I grew up in East Oakland, and so me in East Oakland doesn't really work. At least my skin type and whatnot. I worked in East Oakland, it was fine because I'm biracial, but there's that generational trauma to where, like, part of my family was slaves, part of my family, ancestry was slave owners, part of my family was European immigrants, part of my family was brought to this country and whatnot, right? Part of my family, my grandmother, my great grandmothers grew up in California post World War II through de jure segregation. So there's a lot of different things coming through my system from all these different generations, from all these different generational traumas that just get passed down because they create links neurologically that just get passed down, that just get passed through generation to generation to generation. And those things are part of the stuff that we're carrying too. We don't understand why until we understand why, until we ask
I
ourselves,
know
okay.
I have this saying that I say all the time. If you don't figure out the why, you're never going to get to the what. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one thing that I like to break down with people too, like that I'm working with. Well, if you find your why, you find your what. You find the what, you find the how. You find the what, you find the who, or the how, the who. And then you find the when. When are you going to start? And you need to start today. You got to start today. When are we going to start? Why are we going to start? Like, none of that starts. You can't get down that, like, staircase right there until you find the why, until you find your why, your purpose, or not even a purpose, but just an answer that you can then I don't belay from, right? So you can start climbing down that mountain with your rope and everything until you have that, because that's what's going to hold you as you rappel down. So, little rock
I agree
climbing
with you
reference.
100%.
I don't
You
rock
make
climb, but
some really valid points.
so. And then the third thing that I wanted to hit on here from what you mentioned here, and we're flying on time here, which no surprise here. These conversations, when you're flying, you're having a good time, the time flies with you. So I love that you brought up, and I love that you challenged me on that maternal and that paternal mental health aspect of it, because it's true. That's one thing that we didn't really get into. I can see how we kind of took narrative street there a little bit, to where we kind of ran with the fatherhood side of it. Particularly, we didn't really look at the motherhood side of it, but it's a fatherhood podcast kind of thing, which happens. But no harm, no foul, really, because I feel like we did, at least briefly touch on the mother's state of it too. But I agree with you as well. If the mother's not being checked in on, there's no way in hell the father's going to be checked in on. And we understand that as fathers, right? Like, I have 2 kids. I've seen it firsthand. If the mother's taken care of or she's not being taken care of, then there's no way in hell the father's even going to be thought about at all. None. Zero, zilch, not a none. And I'm seeing this firsthand right now with some family of mine, to where I'm kind of ever the optimist, to where it's like, okay, I've had the kids, I see the kids and whatnot, but the situation, and I see it, and this doctor of this family member of mine is scaring the crap out of this first time mother, making the thing seem so much worse, making the things that are going on, oh, there's going to be a hole in the heart. Oh, never mind, it's fine. It's like, why? Why is your doctor even bringing that up? Kind of thing, right? Like, you should
Yeah,
have
that's
left
scary.
should have bounced from that doctor right away, right? Go and bounce from that doctor and go find you a new doctor, like up and bounce, like immediately, kind of thing. Because you don't know until you know. There's no point in scaring an expectant mother or an expectant couple with, any big medical. Don't scare. I guess the message here is, like, don't get scared unless it's actually something to get scared about. yes, there may be irregularities. Yes, there may be genetic things, but until you know 100% for sure that's a thing, and you won't really know 100% for sure until the baby's damn near born, because you can know some things or you can suspect some things like, okay, there's going to be a 90% chance of this, 80% chance of this, 70% chance of this. Well, this is going to be really bad and extreme. Guess what? That baby's born. And this is kind of where I'm at on it because I have 2 kids. I've seen it. I've been through those appointments and those visits twice to where it's like, oh, yeah, there's baby's born and it's very minor. It's very much nothing. It's like, yes, my genetics give the baby a chance for an irregular heartbeat, a heart arrhythmia, things like that. Oh, the heartbeat was off at one appointment. Okay, well, that's just the one appointment. What about all the other time when I'm at home and things are normal, right? So it's just like, don't get scared by the things that aren't there, that you cannot physically see or that you cannot physically hear, because there's a lot going on in that belly, right? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things shifting, moving, swishing and slooping around kind of thing. That it's hard to tell for sure. Technology's not perfect. 3D ultrasounds aren't perfect to where, yes, it may look like there's something wrong, but could that have just been a bad angle? Could that have just looked weird? Could that have been like a booger or something? Could that have been just a weird angle that was taken? Maybe the baby moved. Maybe the baby was moving its lips or something. Who knows? Who knows? Because we're not in there with the baby. The baby doesn't even know what it's doing, right? Baby's just living its happy little life, just chilling, sucking through this cord. But there's no point in stressing out the mother, because that's when the postpartum mental health things start. That's when the maternal mental health issues start, is just during those appointments, to when you're stressing out the mother about who knows what, everything and everything. Because then that stress carries onto the baby, and then from the baby, that carries into the pregnancy, and then that carries off into postpartum, right? Those are the neural links that are being created with the baby. So the baby's always going to have this feeling of stress and anxiety, because that's where their neural links are coming from stress and anxiety of the mother, kind of thing. And so it all starts, really, we think that postpartum depression starts like the second the baby's born. It starts well before that. It starts well before. Those thoughts are being carried with the mother and with the father well before, right? But it's not asked about until the baby's born. But then it's only treated then. Why isn't it? That's one of the big problems too, just society-wide, is we have this reactive kind of healthcare system, right? We don't have a preventative system. We're not trying to prevent these things. We're not trying to get into it early at the 12-week appointment, at the 16, at the 20, at the 30, at the 32, at the 35. Because then after like 34, 35 weeks, you're seeing the doctor every single week. Why aren't we asking about it then? Why aren't we asking about it at 30 weeks? Why aren't we asking about it in the second trimester? Why aren't we asking about it in the very first trimester? Because I'm telling you, it starts in that first trimester, from when the couple finds out that they're pregnant. That's when it starts for the man as well as the woman. Because now the man is thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be a dad. I'm not ready for this. I'm going to fail. All these thoughts start spiraling and coming. Same for the mothers as well. That's when it all starts. But we wait 6 to 9 months, if that, to even think about treating it. So we let it spiral for 6 to 9 months. Who do you know that was successful in treating their mental health with a 6 to 9 month gap of no treatment?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's one of the things. So I don't have kids because I've always been because my mental health issues have been so bad. I always feared that pregnancy was going to make it a lot worse. And I'm to a point now where I do want kids because I'm stabilized. I'm on the right treatment plan. But then I have to ask my psychiatrist, like, what medications do I have to come off of in order
All of
to
them.
have a baby. And because you don't want certain medications messing up your child and messing up your body while the child is in there. And my psychiatrist, I looked this up well before I even asked this, and I said, I know I can't be on this. I know I can't be on this. And she was like, I'm glad that you looked that up. That's really good information, and you're exactly right. And then there were two medications that I was questioning. And I said, I don't think I can be on this. I don't think I can be on this, but I want to know from your perspective what you think. And she said, those two medications are going to be something your OBGYN is going to tell you shouldn't be on. But she said, from my perspective and, my education on these medications, there's something that I believe you can be on. And she didn't say it like she didn't know whether or not I should be taking it. She said, what's important for me is your mental health, the aspect of your mental health while you're pregnant is more important to me than your OBGYN telling you that you shouldn't be on these medications, because she said there's never been real studies proven that those medications actually affect somebody who is pregnant or the baby. And so she said, if you're stressed out and freaking out, the baby is going to be stressed out and freaking out. So if you have those medications in your system, you're doing fine. There's no reason to be taken off of them. What's important to me is that specifically.
Yeah. And those things can be adjusted, right? Like, yes. And that's probably just a scary thought in itself, because you'll have to be off of them or start being the weaning off process as you're actively trying to get pregnant, right? Because those things can't really coexist. Right. And then some of those medications, there's also a deeper aspect of it too. If you're on those medications, maybe and then you're not successfully getting pregnant, maybe there's something in those medications as well that's preventing you from getting pregnant as well, which is why it can be so hard for women, especially who do have, who are on med management for multiple medications, maybe for multiple things, which isn't a bad thing at all. It's okay. Everyone's different. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be the same for men as well. Maybe it's affecting your the quality of your baby making. Maybe it's affecting the ability that you have. Maybe you're blocking yourself and you don't even know you're blocking yourself, kind of thing. Maybe you're in your own way with those medications. So it's important to then ask, like you said, you started the conversation, because you're like, okay, I'm at a place now. My husband and I are settled. I'm feeling a lot better. My mental health is at a better place. I'm ready. I'm mentally able to think about this and to take this on, kind of thing. But then you also have to think for yourself as a woman, like, okay, well, when I'm pregnant, I can't be on it. But what about after the baby's born? When it comes to, and that's a personal choice when it comes to breastfeeding and whatnot, right? Because that also, you're going to have the same stuff that you're taking in is going to be going in neuro as it's going to be coming out, right? So you have to be thinking about that too, which is crazy. But it's like, it's another
wild.
conversation. Yeah, it's another conversation that's not even had, right? It's like most women just think, like, if they're off their medication while they're pregnant, great, I get back on them when I'm not pregnant. It's a few months, I can do it, not a big deal. Hold on, no, wait. You actually need to wait a couple more years to get back on that, kind of thing, because it's like when you drink after you have a baby, right? You can't just feed the baby, because there's going to be alcohol in your supply, right? And so it's a whole thing, and it's complicated, it's messy, it's not messy, it's beautiful, but it can, so many complications, so many factors, so many variables are within this. And I'm no expert when it comes to maternal mental health or anything like that. I just been through it, I've seen it, I've talked to a bunch of people, dads, women, everyone in between, about pregnancy and mental health and things like that. I've talked to birth experts, I've talked to doulas and midwives and things like that here in the podcast. And so it's a whole thing. Other psychiatrists and providers as well. But yeah, totally right. These are conversations that you need to start having as soon as you start thinking about it with those providers. And then maybe you're not working with necessarily an OBGYN, right? Maybe you're working more with a midwife. Maybe you're working with someone a little bit more holistic in her approach or in their approach to your prenatal care, right? Because OBGYNs, they're just a doctor, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know how to get the
Right.
baby out of there, and then they leave the room. They bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Midwives are a big difference here because they're very much more holistic. They're way more involved with your care. They're way more open and telling you your different options, talking through those different options. OBGYNs, if you go to give birth at 2 a.m. in the morning, they're not on call. Guess what? You're going to have whoever's there on call delivering your baby. You're not going to have your OB until the next day, and they come in. Midwives are going to be there no matter what time you need to be there, things like that. Your midwife's going to be there to deliver your baby. That's one of the biggest differences, I think, and the holistic approach to it is just so much better. So if you're listening to this and pregnant and you're seeing an OB and your OB's full of shit, then find a local midwife and switch over to a midwife. It's never too late in your prenatal care to switch. It's never too late. Like, even if you're in your 3rd trimester, in your 8th month, and your OB's just been a piece of shit the whole time, go and switch to a midwife for the last month or so. And go and switch your providers at any time. And that can be said for really any part of this we're talking about today. Your med manager. If your med manager is not working for you and you feel like you're working for them, you're their guinea pig or whatnot, then it's time to switch. If your primary care physician is only treating your diagnosis and they're not really providing you help, they're not giving you referrals, they're not like trying to actively help you, whatnot, it's time to switch. Don't be afraid to switch those doctors. Don't be afraid to switch your counselor, your psychiatrist, your therapist. Don't be afraid to switch those people because I get it. I work in the field. I'm a provider myself. It's okay. Like, I'm never going to be offended because there's part of us where we care, right? But we're not emotionally invested. You're emotionally invested in your care. We're the professionals. We're the providers. So if you say, well, you need to switch, it's not working. Okay, no problem. This is who I would recommend then on our staff. We already kind of know. We're just waiting for you to say something, right? It's like, okay, well, down the hall I have so-and-so. Down the hall, so-and-so, she has availability on her schedule. I asked her this morning, kind of thing, since I kind of was feeling in our last session. You're going to bring this up. So I already reached out, kind of thing. Like, we're already ahead of it. You're not going to hurt our feelings. You're not going to hurt our feelings. It's okay to ask for someone new. It's okay to ask for someone different that you feel is going to be better for you. And just have that conversation. Don't just quit. Have that conversation before you say, I'm done with this. I'm out of here.
You made so many good points that I didn't even think of when it comes to maternal mental health. You said something like getting back on those medications later, and some people don't. It's a surprise when they have a baby. Some people aren't lucky enough to be able to plan it. It just happens, and you don't, like, if you're on medications that aren't good, you're going to be withdrawing once that's taken away from you. But they're going to have to wean it down, because if you're taken completely off of those medications, they've got to wean you off, because the stress to your body is going to be something unimaginable, like something you'd never
because you're
believe that you
losing
could
those
go
chemicals. Yeah, it's because you're losing those chemicals. You're losing that part your body's relying on for when it gets into that, like, not fight or flight mode essentially, but when it gets into those times where it needs those chemicals and it's reaching, your brain's like, okay, where is it? It should be here. Okay, why is there only a little bit? Why is there less? Why is there less? Like, come on now. So.
Yeah, and then figuring out whether you can get right back on after you give birth, that's something that I never thought about. And you don't, like, if you're not able to get back on something that was really, really working for you, it is going to be a major struggle. And women and men just aren't given those tools and resources to help themselves cope into paternal. Is it fraternal?
Paternal.
Or paternal? Paternal and maternal. They're just not given enough resources, and I have so many resources for that, specifically both men and women, on my resource link, or on the resources link tab of my website. Just, it's the more, like, you think about it, the scarier it is, because women and men, sometimes their relationship even suffers when they have a new baby and they're not on the same page, and that's like a huge test to your relationship as well. And that's even so much harder than people even think about. And it's really sad, honestly. I think more resources should be provided to both men and women when it comes to parenthood. It's just very scary.
Yeah, there's definitely not enough resources, and you have a dozen of them. I'm assuming it's all the ones from episode 7. I just counted them. There's 12 of them here, so an even dozen from that episode when it comes to this topic here. And you're not really set up for success when you have that baby, you take that baby home. I'm shopping for baby shower gifts right now, and the mom's a first time mom. This is a dad's second kid, but his older one's like 8, 9 years old. And so like I'm shopping and I'm thinking like, what if I was a first time parent? Like, yes, I made my list, I put all these things on it. It's great, but what were the things I actually needed? I really needed a nose Frida so I could suck the snot out of my kid's nose. Right? I really needed a good baby wrap so that I could carry this kid and do things with my hands at the same time, to where I could stay up and I could play video games because I need to stay awake for this child, so I could stay awake. What are those things that I really needed while I was a first time parent? I really needed a pair of nail clippers that were baby friendly, because the adult ones and big kid ones are way too harsh for their little nails. Right? It's going to cause them too much pain. I really needed a comb. I really needed these things that like you're not thinking about unless you've been through it, kind of thing, right? Like you don't know what you need until you know what you need, until you're with the baby at Target in the first couple weeks, and you're scrolling through the Target app or the Walmart app, wherever you shop at, and you're like, oh crap, we need that. Oh, or we need this little spatula to rub the diaper cream on the rash on the baby's butt because our fingers were too rough with our fingers. Even if we're gentle, it's too rough. We need something plastic that's a barrier, because we don't want to get our hands are dirty naturally. We don't want to risk spreading that or making it worse with this diaper cream. And plus, diaper cream never really comes off your fingers anyway, so having that little spatula is fantastic. It's really fun to spatula diaper cream on your baby's butt. Been there, done that. Would recommend getting the spatula. But again, it comes down to like you don't know unless you know, but then you're not told. You're not told these things. And that's kind of like a common theme here as well that we've been talking about. You're not told about all the symptoms and all the effects of a medication that it could have. You're not told like, hey, Selena, you're not told straight up front, like, Selena, you can't be on these medications. Oh, you're pregnant now. Oh, you have to get off all these medications. What? Kind of thing. You're not told that, hey, if you're thinking about having a baby in the next 6 months, then, or if you get to that point where you're thinking about having a baby in the next 6 months, or if you're trying but not trying, the classic that everyone claims, oh, we weren't really trying, but we weren't not trying, kind of thing, and that you're doing that, talk to me so I can let you know how we can plan for those medications and whatnot. Never should a woman or a man or anyone in between have to go and say to their doctor, hey, I'm trying to get pregnant. I read about my medications here that I can't take these while I'm pregnant. Can I take these ones? So on and so forth. Like, that conversation should be had with you up front as a woman, in her, I guess, quote unquote, childbearing years, essentially, in a situation where she wants to have kids and whatnot. Like, okay, well, if you're in that situation, this is kind of what you're looking at. You're looking at being off these medications for probably about 3 years, more or less. It's like 3 years. It's like, yeah, because you're pregnant and then you have to feed the child and you can't. And then, but that's a whole nother conversation, is when you actually have the child and you're feeding, because maybe some of those you can feed with while you're on. Maybe some of those you can now feed with and whatnot while you're on, or maybe you have to pump and dump kind of thing, whatever the situation is. It just really depends, but these are conversations that should be had with you, that an OB should be working with your psychiatric, your med provider, to have these conversations with you. And if your OB is like, well, probably not, you probably shouldn't. Okay, I don't want to probably. I want to know I shouldn't, or yes, I can. If you don't know, here's an ROI. Contact my psychiatric med provider. You talk to her, and she'll talk to me, and we'll figure this thing out, right? Bada bing, bada boom, done. Now I know, kind of thing. So it should be more streamlined. It should be more processed, but unfortunately it's not, because we live in a reactive treatment kind of world versus a preventative treatment kind of world. And that's a big problem that needs to change in itself.
I've said it so many times, but you have to be the biggest advocate for yourself, because nobody is going to advocate for you at a much larger extent than you are.
100%. And I think that's a great place to leave us off here. I'm going to close this real quick, and then I'll ask you a final question, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So let's see. What do I close with? Yes, just like I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, these beats that you hear at the beginning and end of the podcast, like this one right here, maybe. Oh, it's because I have the volume all the way down. Like this one, it's fantastic. It's the Podbeat EDM app. It's the Infinity Beat. And you probably heard several other ones, the trap, the trip hop, the lo-fi. There's plenty more on the app. Podbeat turns any app or audiobook into a musical experience. Gives it that extra You can find Podbeat wherever you get your apps from. And then, of course, shout out to our other sponsors and partners of the podcast. Forefathers Apparel, Dad Bod Apparel, the June app, among with many more, which you can find down in the description of this episode. Wherever you're listening, you'll be able to find that there, and you can check all those amazing partners of the podcast out. They're fantastic. Love them. I wear them. I rep them. I rock them. Can't recommend all of them enough. So please check them out. Support the podcast. And then, of course, wherever you're listening, whether you're on YouTube, watching this, because, I mean, it's us. Obviously, you're going to want to watch this, the video version of this. Selena's background, Selena's room is fantastic. I love the butterflies, the decorations, the decor. It's much more aesthetically pleasing than my light coming from to my right side, and then the sign behind me and random stuff. So yours is much more done up than mine. So if you're on the YouTube machine watching this, make sure you drop a subscription. Selena, are you on YouTube as well?
For sure.
Okay, perfect. I'll link you in this video as well in the description, so you can go and find Selena's channel as well. Subscribe over there. You can leave both of us a comment, some likes, all the things. And if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, make sure you go down, leave 5 stars. If you're on Apple, please leave a review. I love seeing y'all's reviews. Then you can go to the website, ballboymedia.com, for the full transcription of the episode. So enough of the closing business. Selena, normally what I ask is advice for young parents here, but since that's not our case, what would be, when it comes to mental health in general, when it comes to like an overarching theme or any just big final closing thoughts that you want to leave today?
The biggest thing I want to drive home is the biggest pill to swallow for most people, and pun intended, I suppose, is that you're probably, if you're somebody who's on that medication journey because you've tried all the other routes and it just wasn't for you, and it's hard for you to grasp the concept of the fact that you're going to have to be taking medication your entire life in order for your brain not to kill you, just remember that that's okay. That's okay to be on medications. That's okay to be on that journey. And it is okay to be on whatever journey you're on. But like we said, as long as you're doing something about your mental health, you're actively working to fix it, whatever journey path you're on, you need to be fixing your mental health. And you should not be, if you have a partner, parents, kids, they should never be in your line of fire just because you're not taking care of your own mental health. Just be better. Just get better in whatever way you need to get better, but just do it.
Love that. I love that. That's a great place to leave it here. Do what you got to do, right? Get better, be better for yourself, be better for your children, be better for your spouse, be better for your partner, whatever you want to call them. Be better for your family, be better for your friends. They all deserve the best you, and you deserve to be the best you for them as well. They're the best you for you. They're the best them for you. Why not return the favor and be the best you for them? Find the help, do what you got to do. And yeah, of course, if you need help, reach out. Selena has some great resources on our website. I can always direct you to resources as well. We'll direct you to further resources as well. One thing that Selena didn't mention, she is a peer support specialist as well. And so peer support is not counseling, but it does help you get connected with resource, have an outlet, vent. So find local peer support as well. And yeah, do the things that you need to do to show your love for the podcast as we close out here. And yeah, we'll catch you right here next time on the Young Dad Podcast.
Thank you so much.